A specialist in this particular area and will be of great benefit to us as we continue with the discussion.
Yeah, before we go to our drama today, which is going to be in line with what we are talking, I think just to introduce who is in the studio, we have Madam Rebecca Onyango, who is the Sub-County Children Officer, Kuresoi South. How are you? Good morning.
Good morning.
Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
Karibu sana. Good to see you.
Yes. I'm glad to be back. My name is Rebecca Onyango, as has been discussed. I'm the Sub-County Children Officer for Kuresoi South. And today I hope to shed more awareness and more light on matters regarding cybercrimes with our children and how we can mitigate those issues to ensure that our children are not exploited in the digital space.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Thank
and
you.
of course, our dear viewer, if you have any question to our guest, it is very free. You can ask a question via 23814 or 0721 105 105. At this juncture, we want to watch a small skit regarding the topic of the day. Welcome.
Hello, teacher. Mzuri. Ati Masi hajaingia? Hapana, Masi aliamka mapema na nikadhani ameenda shule. Hebu hujamwangalia pengine uko klasi zingine? Ati hayuko? Hebu gojea tu kidogo nitakwambia. Ati Masi hayuko? Masi! 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 Una? Masi! Aman. Masi! Masi! Hapana. Masi! Masi ni nini hizi? Ona? Yaani mtoto hajaenda shule? Mtoto anakosa kwenda shule, anaenda wapi?
I'm sorry, Mom. Please tell Dad I love him and I will miss my brother. I'm really sorry for the pain. Forgive me. Bye.
No, Masi! Oh my God. Oh my God. Nini sasa hapana. Oh my, Masi. Oh my Jesus. Oh my God, hebu nipigie rafiki yake. Oh my God. Oh my God. Masi. Unajipiga picha. Oh my God. When you're naked. Ati if you don't come with 20,000 tomorrow at school, I'll show your friends your nude pictures in school. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. It can't be me. I'm finished. Oh my God. Mercy. 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 Oh my God. No.
Right, there we go, Mangicho. Yeah, I hope you have seen what is happening there.
Yes.
Huyo mama kuna vile mambo imemstua sana. Ni kama mtoto alihadaiwa akaweza kupigwa picha akiwa uchi.
Yes.
And they are demanding a lot of money. Yeah.
Wow, and let's just bring our guest Rebecca. This is something that is really happening.
That is something. It's our reality today, unfortunately. And we have incidences where we actually lose children in the process. They opt to commit suicide rather than tell their parents what they are going through. So as a children office, we handle such kind of cases. And it's devastating to a parent. When you think you know your child, then you realize you really don't know your child. There's a lot of exploitation that happens in the digital space. And it calls for parents to be very intentional parents. I know I said this last year. Yeah. I keep reiterating it. Be a very intentional parent. There is nothing wrong with being actively supervising what your child is doing on the online space. Wow. Because at the end of the day, that is what might actually save your child's life.
Yeah, and exactly, maybe as you continue with your work as the regarding to what is happening there, do you want us to continue blaming our parents regarding to this, or who else can be blamed? And you see some parents are very good at modeling their children, but they find themselves maybe going through the same kind of a trap.
Well, of course, the greatest perpetrator in this is the person who is actually, in that instance, that's called sextortion. So basically what that person has done is they have taken photos, nude photos of a child, which is, of course, that is already, they have contravened the law. Yeah. And then they are using that to extort money from the parent indirectly, but through the child. So in such kind of a case, the person, the sextortionist, is the first perpetrator, and that's the person who the law should be able to now clamp down on heavily. But then, as a parent, you have an oversight role. I believe if maybe for this mom, if she had put, because now we are in this digital space, we have apps where you can actually monitor what pages your child goes to, and you even have access to block. You can, when somebody is engaging your child and they are having chats with them on the social media space, you can be able to actually see the messages that they are receiving. And as a parent, of course, that's a red flag that goes up. So it calls, when I say intentional parent, you might look like you're snooping. And maybe to some children, I'm assuming Mercy is a teenager. So maybe to some teens, they might see that you're an overbearing parent. But better safe than sorry. That's what I say. Better safe than sorry. And
there are many people who think this kind of problem is experienced in the European countries. No. Maybe according to you.
No, not so, because as I said, this is our reality as children officers. I cannot tell you the number of cases of online abuse that we handle even in a week. Up and including cases of trying to repatriate a child back. In Kuresoi South, for example, there was a week where I handled close to 5 cases where I had to return the children back to their counties. So this is our reality right now. It is not a dream. This is not a Western problem. It is a global issue. And that is why even today we are celebrating Safer Internet Day as a global initiative. It's not just happening in Kenya, it's happening all over the world. So this is our nightmare. This is our global nightmare that we need to deal with. It's not just a national issue.
Yeah, before we go to Mangicho, maybe in a very simple explanation, exactly what does it happen?
In what sense?
In terms of maybe exploitation of our children through the internet, through their phones, those who don't have phones. Are they vulnerable, or they use their parents' phones? How exactly do they meander?
You might find, well, for most households right now, according to the statistics, Kenya, we have 46.6 million active online users. Wow. In a population of 50 million plus. So we are talking about the 46 million up and includes children, because children are almost half the population.
Yes.
So in most households you'll find there's a gadget. Either it is the parent's phone, there's a tablet, there's a computer. Then even when you go to the school space, maybe let's assume the children are not allowed to access their parents' phones.
Right.
But in schools, you have computer classes, you have computer labs. So they still have an avenue where they can be able to access the online space. And that they are in as much as we acknowledge the positive that this digital environment has brought in terms of research, in terms of information sharing, in terms of connectivity, but then there's also now the dark side of the digital space.
Sure. And thank you. Just speaking from where Kagi has left, Madam Rebecca, you can also maybe help us to understand, and even for the purposes of our viewer, what are some of these examples, even as you try even to help us understand what we mean when you talk about cybercrime. What are some of these crimes?
Well, there are very many elements.
Especially related now to the children.
To the children.
Yes.
Okay, so for one, we've seen from the example there, that's called sextortion.
Sextortion.
Where you basically take nude photos of a minor and then you use those same photos to try and extort money from them or from their parents. Then you have something called phishing or catfishing, as the teens call it. And this is basically you're engaging in conversations online in the digital space with somebody who's pretending to be something they're not. So it is, for example, I am having a conversation with a vulnerable minor, let's say a 14-year-old child, let's call him minor. But the photo that I've even posted on my Facebook is not Onyango. I have the photo of somebody else. So number one, that's already identity theft, because I am masquerading as someone I'm not. But then when I organize to meet with Minor, Minor is shocked because when we meet, he realizes this is not the same
somebody
person.
different.
Yeah, so they call that catfishing or phishing. You also have avenues of like the child pornography. You have children who, for example, in that case of Mercy, it could have been the man took photos of her, or maybe she was cajoled into actually taking photos of herself with the promise of maybe finances. She was going to be given money. But then in some instances you find that the child is vulnerable, emotionally vulnerable. So what most of these children seek out with these strangers is the very thing that they lack at home. So if they lack affection, if they lack attention, maybe there's no father figure there for guidance, or a mother figure, they will look for that affirmation outside. And now there comes the problem, because I want to call them the perpetrators in this case. The perpetrators, it's like they feed into that. So if it is attention you need, that is, they will pour you and they'll bombard you with a lot of attention, such that they twist your mentality to think this person actually cares for me. Yeah, this is a total stranger you have never met. But they make you feel what you ought to have felt from back at home. So it builds that level of trust. And there we can have even cases of trafficking. We have a lot of child trafficking cases. Again, in my sub-county, I border Narok, I border Kericho on this other side. I have, I think the last half of last year, we have repatriated over 30 children who are coming in for early marriage cases.
Wow.
Early marriage. And we're talking teens. Those two cases coming into Kuresoi
from those counties.
And then when you follow up with the area chief, you discover there's a problem at home. But then, so this child has felt like they're pressed to the wall, and they feel like nobody listens to them. So their best recourse is this one person who showed them attention and affection online. That is the person that I want to be with. So we don't know how it happens, but you will find children coming from as far as Kericho, coming from as far as Western, transversing through Nakuru. And part of the reason why this year's celebration is being marked here in Nakuru is because Nakuru has registered the highest numbers with regards to child exploitation cases. And this is on record with the DCI, it's on record with our directorate. So something needs to give. We need to do something to be able to mitigate this, so that our children don't always feel that the best recourse for them is to run away from home, become child brides, which is not right. And then opening yourself up to a lot more vulnerabilities in that space.
And the major age bracket of most of those who are affected?
I would say between children with between ages of class standard 7 up to around Form 3, Form 4. That's where we've registered a very high number of children lost and found. We call them lost and found cases, because once the child has been found and at the police station, the matter is referred to the DCI for tracing. So the DCI have their own child trafficking unit. And then also, even with regards to the children office, the various children office also being a stakeholder, we play a great role in terms of trying to reintegrate the child back, because now we take it upon ourselves to find out what is the issue back at home. Why is this child running away?
And maybe even before you continue with the other crimes and Kagi comes in, when it comes now to really determining these perpetrators, like for example, the sexologists and the ones committing the crime of phishing, what are the dynamics?
Well, you see, the funny thing about these perpetrators is they don't have a look. You can't look at them and say, this one is a sextortionist, this one is a defiler. They just look like your normal you and me, right? So there's no particular look that you can say, but then you just look at the characteristics surrounding this person's behavior. Most of them are usually very antisocial, or they don't want you to be in the know of what they are doing. If you realize somebody is just in this kind of like a financial ring, but you don't know, they don't work. So you're wondering, where are they getting this money from? Sure. If somebody is always overly affectionate around children, for me that's always a huge red flag. If it's a parent, yes, but even with a parent, you know, we have cases of where a father has defiled a daughter. Yeah, so as I said, it's not tattooed on their forehead that I'm a defiler. Yeah. So as a children's office, it's not like we have maybe some loopholes, some gaps, even in terms of maybe ensuring that we have these safe internet or safe digital space. Exactly. We have it's called the Cybercrimes and Computer Misuse Act 2018, which complements together with the Children's Act 2022 and the Sexual Offences Act of 2006 or 3. Even with those 3 laws, this cybercrimes is something that it mutates into something even worse as we go along. So we cannot just say we have had it down to a T and we know exactly how to mitigate 1, 2, 3. We are constantly relooking at what are the loopholes where we can see those loopholes. It's a phenomenon that is evolving. Exactly, it's an ever-evolving phenomenon. So we have to keep, as stakeholders and policymakers, we have to keep going back to the drawing board. Okay, now we have this new thing that's coming up. How do we mitigate this issue? Right? Because you see, the mind of a criminal is they must always be at least 10 steps ahead of you, right? Yeah, so even right now, as we are launching this, as we are doing SEED, there's going to be some guidelines that are going to be launched at the event. And based off of those guidelines, there's going to be workshops conducted countrywide for the various stakeholders to be able to know how do we mitigate some of these issues when they arrive at your office. As a children officer, if I'm brought for a child who has been through online space, has been recruited to Al-Shabaab, for example, how do I handle that kind of a child? Right? Because maybe some might not fully have the capacity to be able to deal. You know, at the end of the day, children officers, we're also human beings. So sometimes you might find something and you feel like this is overwhelming. Okay, so then who do I turn to? There's always another referral agency that you can be able to guide the child through so that they can be able to be helped. Because at the end of the day, we want our children to be less traumatized and to grow up holistically, understanding the dangers that they can face in the digital space, but then also embracing the positivity that comes from the same digital space.
Right. And one of the questions that you're asking our audience today, Madam Rebecca, is what can be done to stop children cybercrime? And I'm trying to reason as one of the ways to curb this problem is the way we deal with the suspects or the culprits. Okay. I don't know in your assignments whether you can attest that enough is done to be able to deal with those who are maybe abusing children online, and if it is being done, is it coming back to the society that if you do this, it is going to have a very heavy punishment?
Yes, it is. I would say particularly with the cases that touch on sexual offenses, because most of these crimes, cyber crimes that happen, particularly touching on children, involve some sexual activity, one way or the other. Either like that one for sextortion, where you've just taken nude photos, to where somebody has actually crossed the line and defiled the child. So we have the Sexual Offences Act is very clear. For children between the ages of 11 and below, that one is imprisonment for life. There is no mincing words about it. That's imprisonment for life. Children between the age of 12 to 15, you face 20 years. Okay. And then children between the ages of 16 to 18, it's 15 years. But then there's a caveat.
That is whatever kind of cybercrime against children.
This is, we're talking about now the sexual kind. The sexual. But then there's a caveat. It depends also with the context surrounding that offense. So for example, if you have the case of maybe a 16-year-old, and it is not just defilement, but there was sexual assault. Sexual assault means there was not just penetration, but then somebody also used an object to penetrate any opening of that child. So it could be a bottle, it could be a crude weapon. That one, depending on how the magistrate feels, it is minimum is that 15 years, but you could end up getting for life. Because some of these crimes, when they happen on the children, we're not just looking at the physical. You know, the physical, after a few years you heal. But then there's the deeper wound, which is a psychological wound.
Right.
And that one can take years to try and erase. So I would say our laws are, they are working, they are functioning. But what I would push for personally as a children officer, I would prefer that people who are found culpable with sexual offenses or even these cyber crimes, if they would just get life. I think that would send a very strong message.
All right. I'm coming back to those who are from class 8 coming down, because those who are in high school, sometimes they have some phones. According to your own maybe understanding, the cases you have handled, those who are from class 8 and below, where do you get which gadgets do they use?
Mostly you'll find the access through their parents' phones back at home. Some households have tablets for children even as young as 4. So that already, you're opening them up to that vulnerability in the digital space. And as well, there's also, if schools, and particularly with schools, if they are not monitored, you might find children accessing even pornography. In schools, even in school, even in primary schools. For parents who allow their children to access their phones, my advice is usually very simple. Ensure that whatever information is on your phone is conducive for that child. So if you're on many WhatsApp groups where they just randomly send weird photos or links to maybe pornographic sites, maybe that's not the best tool to give your child as a learning aid. Because most parents would argue, my child is using my phone for research. But then, are you keen to see what research your child is on? And mind you, some of these digital, these apps that prop up, it might not look at face level that this is a pornographic site or maybe this is a phishing site. It might prop up even with a cartoon. Right now we're in an era where there's that push for LGBTQ community. So what I have noticed, even with, personally I have children who have tablets and my youngest is 4, so that's why I'm guilty as charged. But I'm also that overbearing parent who monitors a lot. So I noticed some of even the cartoons that we have are still passing that same message. So if that message is something that does not align with your values, with your principles, then it's not conducive for your child as well.
Nimekumbuka kisa kimoja Mangicho na Rebecca. Wakati moja nilikuwa nazungumza na mtu away from abroad. And we were just chatting kikawaida tu, but I was asking myself kwa nini tunachat naye hivyo sana na tujazoea kuchat sana. And nina ignore tu until this now person akanipigia simu. Akaniambia, Paul, nataka kuomba msamaha sana kwa sababu nimeona tumekuwa tukichat na wewe sana lakini sio mimi.
Wow.
It's my daughter, although haikuwa ati mbaya ama nini, but nikaanza kujiuliza aje kama huyu mtoto alichukua simu ya mzazi wake na tulikuwa tunazungumza na yeye kama nazungumza na mzazi wake.
So account ni ya baba yake, mzazi wake.
Ilikuwa ni mzazi wake. In fact ilinistua sana. Sasa nikafikiria kama ningekuwa niko nataka kumfanya anything to do with maybe bullying or something, ningekuwa na chance nzuri sana.
Exactly.
Na yeye angejificha kwa simu ya mzazi wake, tuwe tukizungumza na wewe. So I think these things are very rife, as you're saying.
And as per the Sexual Offences Act, in such incidences where it was taken to court, you'd have to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you are not aware that you were chatting with a minor.
Can you imagine?
So you see, something like that can actually incriminate you.
Yes.
Yeah? Because to you are chatting with the father. But maybe this child has actually understood the dad to a T, even the conversations he has with his friends, that she can actually actively engage you for hours on end and you don't notice. Right?
Yeah.
So unaona venye mtu anaweza kujipata pabaya very easily
kujitoa hapo. Okay, and we are asking you today, dear viewer, that what can be done to stop children cybercrime? What can be done to stop children cybercrime? Today we are having Madam Rebecca Onyango, who is the Kuresoi South Sub-County Children Officer leo yuko hapa, unaweza kumuuliza swali kuhusu mambo ya cyber crime. Na pia kama wewe ni mtoto umekuwa ukisimuliwa na watu katika mitandao na umeshindwa vile utafanya, hujapata mtu wa kuzungumza naye, unaweza pia kutuandikia text kidogo sema kwamba uko na hii issue, alafu yuko hapa ataweza kukusaidia na kukufuatilia. Nambari ya kufanya hivyo ni 23814 23814 ndio nambari ya kusema nasi katika studio hizi. Our ordinary SMS number pia tuko na 0721 105 105. Kwa hivyo tutakuuliza aje, utuambie tunaweza kufanya nini kuona kwamba tumemaliza kabisa dhuluma zinazofanyiwa watoto katika mitandao yetu ya kijamii. Tuandikie SMS, alafu afisa aliye katika studio ambaye pia anaitwa Madam Rebecca Onyango ataweza kutusaidia. Na pia kama kuna uwezekano wewe ni mtoto pale na umesumbuka sana, kuna dhuluma ambazo zimekuwa zikiendelea pale nyumbani, shuleni, wherever, na unahisi kwamba ungetaka kuzungumza na mtu, basi leo umebahatika sana, manake tuko na ofisa ambaye ako hapa kwa sababu yako. Nambari nakupatia tena 23814 au 0721105105. Niko na mwenzangu Mangi Chomola, nami naitwa Paul Kagi. Baada ya pumziko fupi tutakuwa tukirudi sehemu ya pili ya mazungumzo yetu ya siku ya leo, ambapo tunazungumzia kuhusu the children and cyber crimes, ama watoto na dhuluma katika mitandao. We are taking a short break. We'll be right back after this.
MBCI Television, transforming lives.
Next on.
Naona umeanguka katika mtihani tena.
Kwani lazima kila mtu amshabikie huyu Yesu?
Ati nini? Nani? Daniel, umeconfirm Daniel?
Kuna nini?
Daniel, umepata ajali ya barabara.
Kijana. Pole sana.
Neno linasema, nao walipoanza kuimba na kumsifu Bwana, akaweka waviziao juu ya wana wa Amoni.
Kumbe hili jambo limechunguzwa kwa kina sana. Na nashukuru kwamba hivi karibuni utarejeshwa leseni yako.
Jina la Yesu ni ngome imara.
Welcome to Africa International University, where education meets transformation. At AIU, we don't just educate, we inspire and innovate, shaping Christ-centered leaders who will transform Africa and the world. Our academic programs cater to every ambition: certificates, diplomas, bachelor's, postgraduate, master's, and PhDs. Join our international community and embark on an exciting academic journey that goes beyond borders. We lead, we innovate, we inspire, because at AIU, we are more than a university. We are a family with a common goal of transforming the world. The time is now. Enroll in AIU and be a part of a university in the heart of Africa, with Africa on its heart. Africa International University, where dreams take flight and leaders are born.
Wakati wa kulima umefika. Ukulima bora ni Lovol Tractor. Kwa nini Lovol Tractors? Ni za hadhi ya juu na zina vipengeza ubora zaidi ambazo ni tofauti sana na tractors nyinginezo. Zina warranty ya hadi miaka 2. Lovol Tractors zinapatikana kutoka 25 horsepower hadi 220 horsepower. Vilevile tuna FM World Combine Harvesters za hadhi ya juu kwa wakulima wanaovuna mchele. Unazipata na warranty ya mwaka 1. Low-volt tractors na FM World Combine Harvesters waweza kuzipata kwa mkopo kupitia kwa reputable financial institution in Kenya hadi kiwango cha 90%. Sheria na masharti kutumika. Low-volt tractors na FM World Combine Harvesters zinapatikana Camco Equipment Kenya Limited, authorized distributor of low-volt tractors and FM World Combine Harvesters in Kenya. Vile pale Camco utapata weighai generators zinazotoa umeme kutoka viwango vya 17 kVA hadi 3000 kVA. Forklifts za utofauti sana, wheel loaders za kipekee na equipments nyinginezo. Tunapatikana Nairobi, pale head office ya Tuskys ya zamani, Sit Cabanas main stage, Mombasa Road, na pale Nakuru ni Marshall Building along George Morara Avenue, direct opposite Nakuru County Assembly. Camco Equipment Kenya Limited, your one-stop shop for agriculture and heavy equipments.
Life is brimming with moments worth celebrating. The dreams we chase, the connections we cherish, the laughter that fills our hearts. These are the true treasures. But sometimes, the path to those moments can feel clouded by financial worries. What if you could invest in a future where chasing your dreams isn't just a desire, but a reality? With Enwealth Capital, small steps lead to big possibilities. With Enwealth Money Market Fund, you can secure your financial future for a better tomorrow. Meticulously crafted for growth, carefully managed for safety of your investments and growth, you can invest as little as 1,000 Kenyan shillings. Whether you yearn for the freedom to travel, the joy of owning a home, or the security of a comfortable retirement, we enable your dreams to reality. Sign up today through www.enwealth.co.ke/capital or call 0700 617 443 and secure a lifetime of financial well-being and dignity through Enwealth. Enwealth Capital Unit Trust Scheme is approved by CMA, which does not take responsibility for the financial soundness of the scheme. Prices of shares and income may fluctuate and the right to redeem shares may be suspended. Enwealth Capital Limited is a subsidiary entity of Enwealth Financial Services Limited with regulatory approvals to provide pensions, investments, and insurance services.
MBCI Television, transforming lives.
Right, karibu tena katika MBCI TV katika kipindi cha Legal Tuesday, mahali ambapo tunaangazia kuhusu masuala ya kisheria. Leo tunazungumza kuhusu watoto na dhuluma za kimitandaoni, children and cyber crimes. Tuko na afisa kutoka sehemu za Kuresoi South ambaye ni anasimamia sub county hiyo kama children officer, Madam Rebecca Onyango, ambaye anatusaidia kuweza kuchanganua masuala haya na pia kukupatia nafasi wewe ukaweza kumuuliza swali kupitia MBCI TV. Nambari yetu 23814 23814 au 0721 105. Today we are asking you, what can be done to stop children cyber crime? What can be done to stop children cyber crime? Nini kinaweza kufanyiwa tuweze kumaliza mambo haya ya dhulma za watoto kimitandaoni? Sema nasi. Na Madam Rebecca, tulikuwa tunaendelea, lakini kabla kuangazia masuala mengine ambayo nadhani Mangicho wako nayo, nimetaka kujua wakati ambapo umekuwa ukifanya hii kazi, hizi visa or these cases, are they mostly in urban or rural areas? If they are in urban or rural, which ones are more here, which ones are more there?
I think for the cases that we have handled, it's both. It's a mix of both urban and rural. The ones that I've experienced from the rural areas are the ones that lead to cases of child marriage. So basically, you can say poverty is a driving factor for most of these children. And also there's some maybe psychological abuse that's happening in the homes. But with regards to the urban areas, it's not even so much of child marriage. I think there's peer pressure plays a big role there. And also children are in that experimental phase. Maybe you've had your friend, or you see your friend now has accessories or things that you desire to have, and then they introduce you to these avenues. So it's a mix of both urban and rural. With regards to the ones happening in the urban areas, it also touches greatly on issues of child pornography. Rural, mostly it'll end up in child marriage. We are mitigating cases of child marriage. But in urban areas, we have sextortion, we have child pornography, we have fishing, the way I said, or catfishing, and we also have a lot of cyberbullying that happens. And as I said, it's not a national thing. You've seen even in the US, children who have been bullied for maybe years. Yes. And then they go into a school and they shoot up everyone. Because they feel like they are not being heard, they are being discriminated upon. So this is our reality.
Away from the phones that you have talked about, there are issues of the cyber sites or the cyber businesses in our estates, in our villages.
Exactly.
Have you experienced some cases regarding to this from our cyber sites or businesses?
Well, from Kuresoi side, where I'm working now, I have not encountered any. Most of the cases, as I've told you, is children coming in to be child brides.
Away from Kuresoi, maybe in engagements?
In Nakuru West and Njoro area, yes, you can encounter such kind of cases. And usually one of the mitigation measures is cyber, we also take you to court. Because, as I said, the parent is not present there with the child when they're accessing these websites. But then you, as an adult who's manning that station, you need to be very cognizant of what the child is accessing. If you have not blocked certain websites, because there's some cybers where you go in, you cannot access pornographic sites, even if you tried. So at least you can say the owner of that space has tried to safeguard it, so that when children go in, because kids will go in even to play PlayStation, that they don't wander off or they don't click on something they're not supposed to click, and then it opens another Pandora's box. But in such kind of cases, it's not just the parent per se that will be after, but then also the owner of that establishment, because it is their duty to safeguard that space for the child.
Because you find when schools are closed, all the children are going to PlayStation.
To PlayStations, exactly. And these movie shops as well. So it is imperative on the owners of those establishments, just make sure that the space is conducive and it's safe. And whatever material you're showcasing there is conducive for that and age appropriate for those children.
Right.
And when you talk about the issue of parents, Madam Rebecca, because I know for those maybe who are perpetrators maybe from the outside, there is a way maybe in which it can even be a bit easier maybe to follow on them. But when now it comes to the parents, and maybe they're the ones that have now become reckless, they've become careless, and they've left the children now to the danger of these particular crimes now in the cyberspace, in the digital space. How difficult it is for them actually to be held accountable?
Well, they will be charged for neglect, for one. That is child neglect. And again, looking at the context within which this neglect has happened, because a lot of parents will say, okay, I'm out, I'm trying to fend for the family, but then you don't leave a child to raise a fellow child. I know it happens a lot in our homes. You will just say, okay, my eldest daughter is 11, she can manage the rest, and then you leave. And you leave the children unattended to the entire day. So when you come back as a parent and you find that your child, either they've started being recruited into gangs, or there's extortion that's happening, and you've left them in an environment where the internet is there for them to access. Because sometimes also as parents, yeah, we are guilty of it. You're tired, you don't want to have that conversation with your children because you also just want to rest, take a few minutes to yourself. So what do most parents do? You give out the phone, you give out a tablet, because that will have the child's attention for 45 minutes or an hour.
Busy.
Exactly. But then, again, if you have not safeguarded that space, because I go back to this, in as much as technology is ever evolving, we also have these apps where you can monitor from your phone and see what your child is consuming online. So if you can be able to safeguard that space, then I don't see any problem with that, because at least you can rest assured that your child is accessing appropriate sites.
Okay. Yeah.
But then if you just leave it to them to discover, I don't know why, but is it human nature when we are being curious, you will always go to discover, or you know, you're discovering from the wrong avenues first. So yes, again, as a parent, it might not require you to be 24/7 there with them, but if you've safeguarded that space, yeah, that is what matters.
About this one, regarding to us safeguarding that thing, uko nyumbani sisi tuko katika era ambayo technology imekuja sana, unaweza weka internet nyumbani, na katika hii internet tuko na smart TVs ambazo I think ni vigumu sana kuzimanage. If you go to those smart TVs, one is kifunguliwa mahali kuna internet, anybody can access any station akiwa nyumbani.
True.
Na sometimes kama niko kazini sasa kama hivi, kwangu kuna internet, watoto wako nyumbani, I don't think there is any security regarding to those sites. Kwamba TV yangu ndio hiyo, ni smart TV, they can access any site or any station or anything.
Na hujakuja na remote kazini.
You've left the remote at home. Again, yeah. So I don't know if some of these smart TVs have a provision where you can download those apps that can block those websites. But for me, I'll go even as far as putting security cameras that I can. I'm that kind of a parent. I will put security cameras to monitor and see what's going on, even if I've employed a nanny.
Yeah.
Because some of our children also get abused in the home space with the nannies.
Correct.
There's a lot of cases we deal with boys who lost their virginity to the nanny. You know that?
Yeah.
So it's not something that we should be like, oh, okay, I've left an adult there. And the children have the internet, so the adult will monitor. It's like you've delegated your role to the nanny. Now when it becomes a case, imagine you as a parent, you also get roped in, because you will be charged for neglect as a parent. So it's upon us to make sure that we safeguard that space completely. Personally, I feel this era we are in, most children don't even really know. You know, when we were growing up, we rarely used to sit watching TV. We were always outside playing. Yeah. Even if you're getting up to mischief, we were outside, we were exploring outside. I feel like this younger generation, Gen Z, kuendelea, them, they are very much into what is going on in the digital space. They're on the TVs and not so much active outside. So maybe if as a parent, you know you're going to be out for maybe 2-3 hours running an errand,
if you go to
your children... Imagine, you will find most of them are inside.
Yeah.
They are inside the house, or they are in those movie shops or the PlayStation shops, you know, having a go. So it calls on us as parents, but then also even if you have a help, it's good to build their capacity with regards to the dangers that children can face. Because these dangers, by the way, it's not just children. Safer Internet Day is not just specifically for children. It's a special focus on children and the most vulnerable groups. But it touches across even to us. Because we can also fall victim to most of those cyber crimes. Yeah.
And also, Madam Rebecca, because you'll find that maybe even some of these parents, it has taken them so long for them to know that maybe their children were abused in the digital space, in the cyberspace, and you find that maybe even some of them are really shocked to understand when they are told that this has actually happened to their children. Are there some signs that maybe as a children officer you think one can actually look into a child and realize as a parent that, oh, my child, it seems something must have happened to him or her in the cyberspace?
Well, for one, if your child is always online, always online, as a parent, take it upon yourself. or a guardian, take it upon yourself to monitor what exactly is this child consuming. And then who are their friends. You look at, sometimes you're also guilty by association. Look at the friends that they have. And particularly with this teen era, you know, they go with trends, what is now hip. So I always laugh about it. Every Sunday I like going outside Golden Life Mall because I always call it TikTokers Association of Kenya. All the teens from Kaptembwa, they descend there. They shoot videos, they dance. It's entertaining, but then I also at the same time I'm like, this is also can also be an exploitative avenue. I know people are making money on the online space, so everybody wants to get rich. But again, if they are there, do they have the consent of the parent? Because I usually don't see adults accompanying them. It's usually just teens.
So is it, by the way, is it a crime for, is it a violation for one who is below 18 to appear in some of these platforms like TikTok?
Now, so you know, now we have that child protection, where there were some schools even that were being fined last year over $1 million shillings for just using a child's face without the consent of the parent. So I think TikTok, for example, you cannot actively show your face. You cannot have an account on TikTok until you're 18. For those under 18, they're not allowed to go live.
What about parents who go live with their children?
Now, that one as a parent, it depends. Personally, I feel what content are you putting out?
The nature of the content.
Yeah, because if you're going live with your child and maybe you're discussing about challenges facing teenagers, that's an educative platform. Okay. And you as the parent, you've consented. And maybe even as a teenager, they've also consented to it. So that's okay. But then when you have those avenues where it looks exploitative, like you cannot go live and be showcasing the naked body of a minor, a toddler, or an infant, because an infant cannot give consent. And then you as a parent, why are you opening your child to that kind of online scrutiny? Right? So we have to be a bit guarded. In as much as everybody wants to keep up with the trends, also just safeguard the safety and security of your child.
Na kuna kitu kimetokea siku hizi wakati ambapo niko na mtoto ako underage, below 18 years, au high school, na umemnunulia simu na nataka kuwa na line. You know, number one, she cannot or he cannot register a SIM card. So unakuta wewe kama mzazi unanunua line, unaregister under your name, and therefore akitumia simu ni yake umenunulia kama ni yake, but back end
ni wewe,
ni mimi.
Yeah, the record reads you.
It is me.
Yeah.
So any content ambayo inakuja inasoma I'm not an underage. So nakuta huyu mtoto wa high school ama whatever, the content ambayo inakuja kwa mtu ambaye ni mature.
Exactly.
And you wanna receive. So your SIM card can easily make you access, anamfanya an access any site.
Yeah. And also even just when you willy-nilly as a parent download apps and create accounts using your name for your child. You know, when you create apps, it usually asks for your birthday. So when it's being approved for a 38-year-old.
Yeah.
But the person using or putting content out is an 11-year-old. Now, kikiumana hapo mbele, mimi ndo nitafungwa kama mzazi. Because I'm an accomplice to that crime. I have created a platform where my child has gone on and has been violated. Yeah? So it's imperative parents to be very vigilant on that. Even that issue of registering SIM cards. I know Safaricom allow you to register up to 3.
Yes.
Airtel, I think it's more than 3. So you can imagine if you're not monitoring the kind of content the child is consuming, and the SIM card, the IT footprint in that from that gadget reads you.
Yeah.
So ikikuja kumana hapo mbele, it is you that the DCI will come for. And that's why I'm saying you can very easily find yourself being charged for parental neglect, and then also being an accomplice to that crime.
Yeah, because unaweza ulizwa wewe kwa nini unapatia mtoto SIM card yako akae nayo.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's good for adults to be very vigilant on that. You might on one side you might think you're helping the child, but then on the other hand, pia inaweza kuja ikuende vibaya.
Because I remember like a platform like TikTok.
Yes.
There was a time it had become very, very bad.
Yeah.
I think it was actually even a national conversation.
Yeah.
I think even the president had a conversation. I don't know with TikTok.
And you know, TikTok is a Chinese invention, right? But Chinese people don't put out that kind of content that you see going around. They really monitor what is allowed by a child, what is allowed by a teenager. So they don't just put out everything the way you see. We want to keep up with the trend. We are busy competing with this country and that country. You know, we even have challenges. You're challenging who is going to do it better, Nigeria, Kenya. So we are the ones who are in that
Currently
space.
Currently it is Kenya and Uganda.
Oh, we do have I didn't know. I did not know we have one. But you understand. So you find that even the content that you put out there, or the content, and with TikTok, I'm just talking about TikTok because I have a teen in my house, a preteen, who's obsessed with TikTok. So even with the kind of content, because the TikTok account that she accesses on the tablet is registered to me, so the content is appropriate for a 38-year-old, but not an 11-year-old.
Correct.
Yeah. So it gets to that point where when she's trying to see certain videos, she can't. Mom has blocked. And she's wondering, but it was just people dancing. I'm like, yeah, but they're not dancing appropriately for your age, right? So yeah, I am that kind of overbearing mom, but I have to be because I don't want my child to be a statistic at the end of the day.
But what are some of those tools, Madam Rebecca, for controlling the sites?
Well,
I think maybe most of our parents are not even aware that there's some tools that they can use.
We attended it's like a parental counseling session at my kids' school. So the counselor had given us a list. I can share with you later on. Had given us a list of apps that we can download on our tablet. I was also grey. I kept wondering, now this one I have to delete TikTok. I was deleting everything because I was cautious that my kids are accessing. And this was because I had discovered an avatar. You know, now we're in the age of AI. So I discovered an avatar app that my daughter had downloaded, and yes, she's creating an avatar. She's an artistic brain, so she likes creating. She's a creative mind. But when I started going back and looking at the conversation some of these avatars were having with her, I was like, this one is not an 11-year-old. This is not a conversation. That was phishing, by the way, what was going on there. So I had to explain to her why we are shutting it down. And then we had to close it. She sulked for a whole week, but then eventually I was like, listen, I am a children officer, so I cannot be the one to set an example. Ati mimi ndo nimeshikwa sasa naambiwa child neglect, and yet I'm the one charging other people. So she had to understand it the hard way. But now she's more cognizant of those things. Like there was a time my 4-year-old downloaded an app for unicorns. You color the unicorn and all. But then out of nowhere, this lady unicorn has another friend who's a lady unicorn, and they're supposed to be kissing. I said, no, this is off. So we deleted the app. Again, she sulked, but I explained to her that, listen, this one, that content does not fly with me. It does not sit well with me. It does not align with our principles. So I do not want you to be in that kind of space. So be very vigilant, because some of these apps, on the surface, they don't look like they could be harmful. But just sit there. When they're watching SpongeBob, sit there and watch with them.
I know this one is more of under the Film and Classification Board. We have some laws which have been put in place regarding to how we are releasing our TV content according to the hours. Kuna ile content ambayo huwezi weka mchana ama advertisement ama usiku. Na kuna hizo sheria. Do you believe some of these contents on our television, sometimes they go overboard and they break the law? Unakuta kuna vitu zinawekwa, lakini they are not good at that time because of our children.
Yeah, personally, I believe even with not just movies, even music videos.
Yeah.
When you are doing a daytime show, some of the content that you find on our TV shows, and you find children, even when you attend a children's function, and you see some of the songs that the children get really hyped over, when you listen to the words of that song, the lyrics, as a parent, you cringe. But you know, for the kids, it has a catchy phrase, so that's all. They're not looking at beneath the surface. But you as a parent, you're like, if it does not augur well with you. I remember there was a lot of uproar with Ezekiel Mutua when he started banning certain music videos, certain content. Personally, I believe anything that has that adult over 18 should be aired past bedtime for children. So maybe it's just to put more emphasis on the shows that are putting out content, to make sure that their content is conducive even for children's consumption. And if it's not, then maybe we can just air your shows past 9 when we know the children have gone off to bed. Because some of these avenues of sexual exploitation also is with the content we watch online, on the TV, with regards to movies or even series that we watch. Because when you're going to buy a series, do they usually tell you this one is PG-18? Right now, even most movies, they'll just tell you this is the latest movie out, you know, and your kid will be feeling like, if I don't watch this movie, this is the end of the world. I am no longer, you know, so they feel like they're unworthy. But then when you put the content on, even you as a parent, when you find yourself blushing or you're like, I know this is too much, and you're an adult, now imagine that child who's watching it.
Yeah, and of course, if there is a cinema or a movie that you cannot watch together with your kids, then it's questionable.
It's very questionable. Yeah.
Wow, that's quite interesting. And of course, something else that I think we can also talk about, Madam Rebecca, in regards to the issue of cybercrime and the digital space. When it comes now, maybe even to where this the students maybe are going to, or the pupils are actually going to school, what do you think are maybe some of the measures that can be put into place? Because there are those parents now who will say, and no, at home here I had put all the measures and I did all that was possible for me to ensure that my child is protected. But now when it comes to these other places where our children can actually interact, like institutions, schools, what do you think, or how far can we go in ensuring the same protection measures are put into place?
I think parents can also front the same protective measures to schools to enable them to safeguard. Like I told you, I came to discover about these blocking sites from school. From school, not even from home, because I didn't know. I would not even have known how to figure out to find these apps. So because majority of the children spend most of their time in schools, it would be imperative on schools to also ensure that they safeguard. What I think most schools try to do is whatever security measures they put in place in schools, you try and replicate the same back at home, so that there is kind of like a complementarity and it's not competitive. Because if a child knows that, hey, at home things are thick, you know, mom has put all these measures, I cannot be able to access this. But if I go to school, I can be able to access that, this and that website. Then now that becomes an exploitative avenue. So we try as much as possible, even as a children's office, when we are doing our awareness campaigns and our sensitization drives, we also do workshops in schools. We have partners who come on board, who help us with these sensitization drives in schools. And this year, we are very, personally in Kuresoi, I'm very big on making sure that we create a lot of awareness. One, I want children to understand their rights, so they must know what is in the Children's Act. The Children's Act is like the Children's Constitution. They need to be able to be aware of their rights, because when a child is aware of their rights, then it's very hard to exploit that child. You know, you will have to think twice, thrice before you can actually manage to exploit a child. But if they're not fully aware of the laws that guide them, their rights, then they fall prey to any Tom, Dick and Harry who maybe will promise money or will promise, you know, material things. Yeah. Poverty notwithstanding, I think every child, it should be every child's prerogative to understand what their rights are.
On the same, regarding to the awareness, do you think it's a need to have maybe a curriculum in our schools which can be able to help this?
Yes. So particularly with this Safer Internet Day, I said there was going to be guidelines that are going to be launched today at the celebrations. So part of the stakeholders are also the schools. Government is also on board, but schools also are a very huge stakeholder, because, as I said, that's where our children spend most of their time. So when we are doing these workshops, we are going to definitely incorporate head teachers, Ministry of Education, to be able to come up with a curriculum, to be able to teach children on this as on a continual basis, not just a one-off thing and then that's done. On a continual basis, because, as I said, cybercrimes are ever evolving. So as it's evolving, we also have to keep up with that evolution and make sure that the children are aware of, okay, so now this is the new crime. How do we mitigate this? And then children also need to be aware of the reporting mechanisms, because most people don't know. If you're a victim of maybe let's say cyberbullying, or even if, okay, not a perpetrator is kwenda kujishtaki, but if you're a victim or you know somebody who has fallen victim to this, instead of keeping quiet about it, if you feel maybe telling the parent has not made an impact, you've tried to tell the chief, come to the children's office. If you feel the children's office is too far, we have the children hotline 116. It's toll-free for across all networks. You can call and you can be guided. I know the DCI also have their own hotline. It's called the DCI Child Protection Unit. Their number is 0800 722 203. I can share this with you, then maybe you can share with your viewers.
Okay.
And then there's also the National Kenya Computer Incident Response Team. I know the title is a mouthful, but they are also very active in this space of safeguarding the sanctity and dignity of children in the digital space. And their report number is 0703 042 700. Yeah, so at least we have those three where as a child you can bank on that. If you're afraid of telling your parent, if you're afraid of going to tell the chief or mzee wa kijiji, and the children's office is far, because our offices, like for example me, I'm in Kuresoi South. I told you I'm bordering Narok, I'm bordering different counties, so my sub-county is quite vast. I don't expect a child from Tinet who has fallen prey to online bullying or cyberbullying to come from Tinet to my office. It's 1,000 shillings na piki one way. You understand? It's that far. So instead of kutafuta hiyo 2,000 kukuja na kuenda, which might be hard for a child, just ask for any adult. It could be even your class teacher. Call that 116 number and then you'll be guided from there, because I will be informed in your sub-county there's a child from this area. So if possible, the children officer can even come to you. Or I can also look at the stakeholders on the ground who can be able to help you get the information, and then you know how best to help that child.
And I wish the first person to report to could be a parent. But sometimes it's very difficult for children to report such cases to a parent, maybe because of the fear of the reaction of the parent or what is going on behind the internet.
Exactly.
But I think they could be the best person to report to as a child.
Exactly. I think we should also, we try so much as parents not to be authoritative. Yeah, don't be very an authoritative parent. Be an authoritarian. Be an authoritarian. An authoritarian parent is the one who gives the child the space to decipher what is wrong, what is right, and knowing that whatever you choose, there's consequences to it. So you're giving that child a choice to choose.
We have 1 minute to go to the legal terminology, but there was one burning question. Maybe after we can, so I can be able to chip in.
Okay.
Is there cases of children bullying other children, and how are they handled?
Yes, that happens.
Briefly before we look at the legal terminology.
Okay, so we do have cases of children bullying other children, and well, with such kind of cases, well, one of the mitigation measures is putting that child through extensive counseling, because bullying in general, but then bullish behavior in children, as a children officer, we always, again, look back to what are the underlying factors. So we have to peel off those layers. Why is this child behaving the way they are? And if you look hard enough, you'll come to discover it usually goes back to the home. There is something that is missing, that is lacking. A proper maybe mentorship, leadership, or maybe the child is, they are protesting something, and they feel like their voice is not heard. They are constantly being suppressed. So they take out their frustration on the one person they feel that they have dominion or authority over, which could be a fellow child.
And there are cases whereby a child behaves like an adult and behind the scene tries to bully other children.
But a child behaving like an adult.
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that identity theft? That is like identity theft. But that is interesting. But for me, when I look at children, I don't know, maybe because I'm a children officer, I usually like giving kids the benefit of the doubt. And that's why I take it upon myself to just look. I look at the home setup. You know, sometimes it might not be very easy for a child to open up and tell you what the issues are. Especially if you are the parent and maybe in the child's eyes you are the perpetrator, right? Take for example a child who's grown up in a home where there is domestic violence or GBV happening on a daily basis. It reaches a point this child might decide to just snap And since they cannot take out their frustration on the parent, they come and take out their frustration back at home. Yeah. A child who's lacking attention or affection back at home, or they feel like even absenteeism in parenting as well can cause that kind of a backlash on a child. So they start bullying other children in an attempt to try and overexert their dominance on them. But then with extensive counseling, and we're talking about like extensive rehabilitating of this child, most cases where I've seen of a child offender, if it's a first-time offender, they're usually given probation.
Okay. Now, in this program, we have what we call the legal terminology. Sometimes we try to teach ourselves and even public on some legal matters. And my friend and my colleague Mangicho is an expert in that area. Before I bring what we call the inside law in a short while.
Wow, that's awesome. And of course, we have the legal terminology that we've prepared for you today in this particular program. And we have this particular term, precedent. That is our legal terminology for the day, precedent. And of course, the definition or the explanation is right there on your screen as you can read it. It means a decision by a judicial officer which may serve as an example for other cases or orders. The fact that lower courts have to follow the decisions of the higher courts is known as judicial precedent. So that is what we mean when you talk about precedent. It's a decision made by a judicial officer which may serve as an example for other cases or maybe for other orders that might actually be given by a court. So the fact that lower courts have to follow or have to follow the decisions of higher courts, that is what we mean when you talk about judicial precedent. That is our legal terminology for the day, Kagi.
Yes.
Yes. So sometimes we'll hear maybe some lawyers in the court and maybe they will provide, or maybe they will say, or maybe they will argue and give a point that the High Court or maybe the Court of Appeal had already maybe given set a particular precedent in relation maybe to a particular court or maybe in relation to a particular case. And so in most of the cases, the precedent will come from the higher courts, and of course now the lower courts will have to follow the precedent set by the High Court. Yes.
All right, beautiful. And I believe today, dear viewer, you have really found a new terminology, and we agree that by the end of the year, we are going to call ourselves Learning Friends. And we have what we call the inside law, and today I'm going to present what the United Nations has been doing in terms of helping the world and the communities on maybe managing what we call the protection of children online, is what we have been discussing with our sister here. And one of the things that I want to mention regarding to protecting children online, that every child must be protected from violence, exploitation, and abuse of the internet. And this matter is done both locally and internationally, whereby UN can be able to do this. Some 80% of children in 25 countries report dangers of sexual abuse or exploitation online. Asilimia 80 ya watoto katika nchi 25 wamekuwa wakiripoti kudhulumiwa katika mambo ya maybe dhuluma za kimapenzi na mambo kama hayo. Number 2, for a child victim, this may result in social isolation, mental health issues, substance abuse, self-harm and suicide. Wakati mtoto wako anapopitia hali yote ya dhuluma, huwa kwa mfano anakuwa anajitenga, ile ambayo inaitwa social isolation. Ya pili, anakuwa na kitu kinaitwa mental health, anakuwa na afya yake ya akili inakuwa imetatizika. Number 3, anakuwa na substance abuse, ama anatumia dawa za kulevya kwa sababu ya hizo dhulma, na mwisho anaweza kuwa na self harm or suicide, ile hali ya kujidhuru ama kuweza kujitoa uhai. As we continue, we have various areas ambazo Umoja wa Mataifa umeweza kushughulikia kuona kwamba hatuna shida na kutatiza watoto wetu katika mambo ya kimitandao. Ya kwanza ambao wanaangalia ni mambo ya cyber security, and here wanasema the ITU, the International Telecommunication Unit, guidelines on child online protection are comprehensive set of recommendations for all relevant stakeholders on how to contribute to the development of safe and empowering online environment. Kwa hivyo Umoja Mataifa unasaidia kuona kwamba mambo ya cyber security imeweza kuwekewa sheria. Number 2 is cyberbullying, ambao pia tumezungumziwa na officer hapa leo. Every Thursday of November, the UN UNESCO ambayo inashughulikia mambo hayo ina mark International Day Against Violence and Bullying at School. Kwa hivyo inahakikisha kwamba hakuna bullying katika shule mbalimbali. As we continue, UN also is working on what we call the sexual exploitation, whereby the World Health Organization, WHO, in its 2022 report, talked about preventing online violence against children. Right? And here it focused on child sexual abuse. That is number 1. Number 2, it talks about including grooming and sexual image abuse, kama ambao tumezungumzia. Kwa hivyo iwe nahakikisha kwamba there is no sexual exploitation of any manner. Hakuna dhuluma za kimapenzi kwa watoto. As we continue to the next one is what we call human trafficking, ambayo our officer amezungumzia leo. Mambo ya human trafficking ni kama ulanguzi wa watoto. Unatoa mtoto hapa, unampeleka hapa, unamuhamisha hapa kinyume cha sheria. Umoja Mataifa, the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, UNODC, supports member states in their efforts to prevent and combat what they are calling the human trafficking, including through online safety awareness. Kuhakikisha kwamba watu wote na watoto wanaelewa kuhusu mambo haya. Maybe the last bit is Internet for Trust. In February 2023, that is last year, the UN agency hosted the Internet for Trust conference only to discuss on the set of global guidelines which aim to create a safer and secure internet environment, especially to children. Kuona kwamba mazingira ya kisawasawa ya kulinda watoto imewekwa katika mitandao. The last one is powering systems. Kama kuna kitu lazima kishughulikiwe ni kuona kwamba our systems are empowered to protect children. How? Invest in strengthening systems, building capacities and innovating technology, kama ambao tumezungumzia those apps za kuweza kufunga some sites ziwe ziko pale, and solutions to tackle online harms to children. All right, and that is it today on this session, as we are talking about protecting our children online. Now, I don't know, Madam Rebecca, what I have made today, my presentation, what can you pick or maybe put weight on it as we continue?
One, it emphasizes on the fact that this is a global issue. I think now the viewers can be able to see that something is being done from UN level down to national, even down to county level. Something is being done to try and mitigate and basically to try and stop what we call OXEA, online child sexual exploitation and abuse. So there are legal frameworks being put in place. There are already those that are existing and others that will come up as we go along. But then you can see that it's a collaborative effort. Sure. It's not just the national. We are not leaving it to the national government or DCS because it touches on children. Exactly. It's all the way up to the UN level.
And actually, Kagi, as we are giving that presentation, that is what was actually coming to my mind. And I don't know, maybe, Madam Rebecca, could that be one maybe of the challenges maybe as a country we could be facing? And maybe even you can even help us to understand maybe as a country how we're faring in relation maybe to other countries in terms of maybe how we are affected by these cyber crimes and digital space crimes. Now that when it comes to this particular matter, we are not in isolation, and because it's a global technological phenomenon, and even maybe some of these platforms that we are talking about, they're not Kenyan creation, but we find ourselves in there. Now, when it comes now for us even building some of the laws that can actually help us as a country, are we limited because of the other aspects that are beyond as a nation?
I do not want to look at it that we are limited. For what I do know is when it's being discussed at UN level, it's like a consortium. So it's different countries coming on board and discussing what are their challenges. And I think what is coming across the board is all of us are experiencing more or less the same. As I said, these cyber crimes, they come in, it's like a trend. So there was a time when phishing was the in thing. And then there was cyberbullying. It became an in thing. So with regards to the evolution of the vices on the abuse on cyberspace, it is something that's constantly being discussed in these international forums and also on the national forums. For the national platform, DCS is, of course, on the forefront of trying to, because we work on the ground. So when they come to report to us, this and this has happened, personally, me, I will not keep it to myself. I will share it with my boss, who will share it with her boss, who will share it to headquarters, who might share it to the CS, who will share it to the president. Right? So there's that chain. It's a very long chain.
Like, for example, is there something that maybe needs to be done maybe for some of these particular sites, like maybe Meta or Facebook, for that particular point, to enable a situation whereby we cannot have people maybe creating accounts with the wrong motive and maybe even concealing the identity?
With regards to maybe shutting down of illegal accounts, if we could term it that way, I think that's something that the DCI is clamping on heavy. They still have quite a bit of way to go, because as I said, when you try and shut one avenue, somebody will open another. So you feel like you're in this Tom and Jerry kind of catch-22 situation, but something is being done. With regards to websites that or maybe even apps that you know, the general public could protest and say these are not safe websites for, in terms of our children accessing and all, maybe it would not also be bad for us to go, you know, the Chinese way and have total shutdown of those websites that do not comply with regards to online safety for children.
Right. Again, Madam Rebecca, we have a session called the Profile, whereby we discuss some of the prominent legal professions in the country. But just for a few seconds, before we give Mangicho, is there light at the end of the tunnel?
There is light at the end of the tunnel. I'm an optimist.
Sure.
So
and you tell us about that. You talked about maybe some guidelines that we are looking forward to being launched today at the Safe Internet Day. Maybe if you can give us a short glimpse of some of these guidelines.
Okay. So just to answer your question, Mr. Paul, yes, there is always light at the end of every tunnel. I am an optimist. So I personally believe that, as I said, work is being done. We are not just sitting and waiting for these perpetrators to come up with even more complex ways of extorting or abusing our children online. There's work that's being done. The work will continue to be done, and it's a collaborative effort, because even some of our greatest informants are the children themselves. Some of these things you find yourself learning from the children, not even from the online platforms. With regards to, sorry, your question was? Yeah,
about the Safer Internet Day, now being, you had told us that it is now being commemorated the third time, this is the third year.
It's the 19th edition. The celebration started in 2004. It stemmed from the EU border project, basically just working around internet safety for all groups, but with a specific emphasis on children being one of the most vulnerable groups. In Kenya, we celebrated the first seed celebration in 2020. It was done in Mombasa. Then the second celebration was done in Kilifi last year. And the reason they pick these specific counties is they look at the data to see where incidences of Oxea are happening, which counties are worst hit. That is what determines where the next celebration will be. So as I said, Nakuru, this year we have registered the highest number of particularly children who are trafficked. I think on a daily basis, I see that on our platforms, lost and found. Let's try and trace this child. We have stakeholders also come with and help with that reintegration as well.
Very well. Mangicho, who is on a profile today?
Of course, we've also prepared for you the legal profile. Very, very interesting segment also in this particular program. And today our focus will be on Professor Tom Ojienda. Professor Tom Ojienda is a senior counsel and advocate of the High Court of Kenya. went to Machakos High School and emerged top student in A-levels. Professor Tom Ojienda also got internship at Wahoi and Mwite Company Advocates and was among the 3 top law firms then. He secured scholarship from British High Commission to study at the King's College, that is in the United Kingdom, as an LLB from the University of Nairobi, that is Bachelor's of Law from the University of Nairobi. Professor Tom Ojienda also holds Doctor of Law, Philosophy in Law from University of South Africa. And he started teaching at my university, that is way back in 1997. And of course, he won an election petition filed by Ferdinand Waitito, that is against former Nairobi Governor Dr. Evans Kidero. And by the way, Kagi, this gentleman, Professor Tom Ojienda, is fluent in French and has a diploma in French.
Ah, nice one.
Of course, he's currently the senator for the county government of Kisumu. He's currently the senator for the county government of Kisumu. He has also actually served as the LSK chair, and also he has also served as the chair for East African Legislative, I think, Society. Yeah. And one of the actually reasons or qualities that really propelled him to that position is because of his fluency in French. So you'd speak to some of these East African countries in French and persuade him.
But he's a very articulate law profession.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, even this time around when he's in the Senate.
Sure.
He's very articulate in his senatorial duties there, presentations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he's also a role model to many young law professions. All right.
Any word about Professor Tom Ojienda?
Well, now I feel maybe I should have also pursued my French to diploma level. But yes, he's a gentleman I quite admire.
Okay.
Maybe in another life when I study law.
Yes.
I can try and reach his level.
Wow.
Okay. And I think we have only 1 minute. Maybe you have a message to the community regarding to the children and cybercrime.
Okay. So, thank you, viewers. I think as we've had this discussion today, you've seen the importance and the severity of ensuring a safer space for our children in the digital space. I acknowledge the positivity that exists within the digital space, but then I also acknowledge the challenges that we are facing with regards to child exploitation. So I think the onus is on us. As you have seen, it is a collaborative effort from the UN level till down to the grassroots. We all have to work together to make sure that we can be able to bring down this avenue of our children being exploited. They are future leaders of tomorrow, and we need to be able to safeguard our children holistically, so that we can be able to also produce holistic children. And then also, I think you had asked a question about what was to be launched today. We have, it's called the Standard Operating Procedure on Online Child Sexual Exploitation and Abuse in Kenya. So this will be guidelines that will be able to enable us as stakeholders to know where do we report or how do we mitigate issues when they arrive with regards to our children being exploited online. Wow. So I welcome everyone to join us at the ASK Showground, where the celebration is currently ongoing. And we are in this journey. I'm a children officer, so children's rights, that's my business, that's my core business. And it's not about to change anytime soon. And I also welcome parents. Take the initiative, download. Most of these acts are available online. You can be able to share and also use that as a teaching aid for your children, for them to understand what their rights are, what the challenges that they can face in the digital environment, and how best they can be able to avoid exploitation.
All right, Rebecca Onyango, the Sub-County Children Office there at Kuresoi South. Thank you for finding time once again coming to our studios for this show. We wish you all the success in your endeavors and relenting effort to serve children desk.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
I look forward to being back here in June for Day of the African Child.
Karibu sana.
Thank you. Once again, my name is Paul Kagi. I wish you a blessed day ahead.
And my name is Mangicho Mola. Of course, we'll see you again tomorrow for When is the Leadership. Make sure you keep it right here. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.